welcome back to another episode of Motorcycle Mythbuster. And today I'm going to be talking about running in period. Another big myth. I mean, running in period is not a myth. However, there are so many misconceptions about running in period. So I thought I'll make a video of it. Now, whenever any of us purchases a brand new motorcycle from a dealership, what is the first thing that the dealership mechanics tell us? They tell us that this is a brand new motorcycle, so ride this motorbike slow. Now, what they usually tell us, just for an example, in the case of KTM Duke 390, when I bought that motorcycle about 1.5 years ago, I was told by the dealership and the mechanics that as this is a brand new engine, do not ride this motorcycle at more than 60 kilometers an hour and do not cross 5000 RPM. Now you got to understand how misinformed these mechanics are, because the owner's manual of KTM Duke 390 says that you can ride the motorbike up to 7500 engine RPM, and at 7500 RPM in 6th gear KTM Duke 390 can do well above 130 kilometers an hour, and that is by the manufacturer recommendation. So now, before I go further into this topic, let us understand what is running in period. How did it all start? Say about 30 or 40 years ago, when engines were made, how were they made? They were not made by computer-controlled robotic machines, right? They were made by hand. I mean, they were crafted and molded by hand. And when it is done by human beings, the margin of error can be higher than what it is today. And just for an example, we all know the piston runs inside the cylinder, correct? So there can be some amount of friction that is generated. And if the engine is handcrafted, which was done about 40 years ago, then the inner surface of the cylinder and the piston might not be so well polished, and it might not be as refined as what it is today. So those days, if you had bought a motorcycle or a car, then you had to be very careful for the first few thousand kilometers. And also the oils that we had about 30 or 40 years ago were definitely not as efficient as they are today, and even the oil filters probably were not as efficient as they are today. So coming back to the current day, we all know how machines are made, how engines are made. They're made by state-of-the-art, high technology robots, and all of this is controlled by very high-end computers. So the inner surface of the cylinder, the pistons, everything is smooth, polished, and very refined right from the factory. And also remember, these days most of the engines come pre-run-in. Pre-run-in means the quality control team of the manufacturer, they don't make the engine and just ship it out to you. After the motorcycle is made, after the engine is made, before delivering the motorcycle to you, what they do is they connect many different sensors onto the engine and the motorcycle, and they connect these sensors to computers, and they run the engine. They run it for probably, some people do it for 20 kilometers, some do 50, or some manufacturers even run it for 100 or 200 kilometers. They do it on the dynometer so that they can know how is the engine performing, and also the pre-run-in is already done there. So in today's scenario, when we buy a motorcycle from a dealership, what did I do when I bought the KTM Duke 390? I bought the motorcycle, and the second day I went out on a highway and did 250 kilometer ride. Now you would say, you took the motorbike out on a highway right the second day? Well, yes, trust me, that is one of the best things to do. And you would ask me why? Because we all know when we ride motorcycles in the city traffic, they heat up a lot. And it is the worst thing to do, to heat up a brand new motorcycle a lot. It is not good for the engine. So what I did, I took the motorcycle onto a highway, and I was riding in the 6th gear at 120 kilometers an hour at 6500 RPM, and I was well below the manufacturer recommendation, whereas I could still do 7500 RPM and even do 135 kilometers an hour. And also remember, the first few hundred kilometers are the most critical for your running in. although these days the engines are made so well, however, still for our satisfaction, it is really nice to do a running in period. Also, the second day, I took the motorbike out again, the KTM Duke 390, and I did another 250 kilometers. So there I was, did about 500 kilometers in the first week, all on a highway and at cruising speeds. And the motorbike engine was relaxed, not stressing at all, not overheating, and this is probably one of the best ways to do a running in period. And another myth that I would like to talk about is many people say that they would like to change, replace the engine oil which comes from the factory at 100 kilometers or 500 kilometers. You don't need to do that. If the manufacturer says replace your engine oil, do the first engine oil change at 1000, do it at 1000. And the reason that many people give is that they say it's a new engine, it gets out a lot of metal particles, so you need to change the oil at 100 or 200 kilometers or even 500 kilometers. No, well, there is an oil filter for that reason. The oil filter filters any particles that come out and get into the engine oil. And even if metal particles come out, these metal particles are not huge like rocks, they are very fine. Also friends, one of the worst thing to do is that when mechanics tell you that ride the motorcycle slow, many of my friends, what they have done is they bought a brand new motorcycle and they put it in the top gear, that is 6th gear or 5th gear, and ride the motorcycle at 50 kilometers an hour. That is absolutely bad for the engine because you are stressing the engine. Riding at low speed on the top gear is very bad. For an example, a KTM Duke 390, if you are riding that motorcycle in the 6th gear at 50 or 60 kilometers an hour, you are still not in the correct gear. You could be in the 4th or 5th gear, that is the correct gear. So riding a motorcycle in the top gear at low speeds at 50 or 60 kilometers an hour is not good for the engine. You're stressing the engine, you're not helping the engine, remember that. And having said this, it doesn't mean you go full throttle, full RPM either. You can't do that either. Also friends, I can give you a simple example. It is not about motorcycle engines, but it is about car engines. Now these days, if you buy a Volkswagen or a Skoda car in India, you know when is the first service? Most of the time it is at 10,000 kilometers or 15,000 kilometers. Because these engines are so well made that you practically don't need a running in. And any well-informed mechanic at Volkswagen or Skoda would tell you that you can buy this car and go on a 3,000 kilometer drive. Nothing would happen. However, for our satisfaction, as I said, just be careful for the first 1,000 kilometers and drive or ride at the optimum speed, at the optimum RPM. So most of the time you can go up to 70% of the engine RPM. So if you have 10,000 RPM as your redlining, you can ride at 7,000 RPM. However, do it at 6,000, but don't do it at 5,000 or 4,000. You're stressing the engine. So that is it friends, and again, if you wish to do it, do it. If you wish to change oil at 200, change oil at 200 or at 500. It's just my suggestion, and it's a personal experience. So I'm not saying that you've got to do what I say. That is it friends. I'm done with another episode of Motorcycle Mythbusters, and have a good day. Do write to me if you have any questions. Bye bye. Bye bye.